K-Wave 6 Radio and our host Kirk Spencer welcome you to our show bringing positive messages to today's world. And now, here's Kirk.
Hi, and welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio. Today, my guest is a young man from the same city that Madonna happens to be from, Bay City, Michigan. He has actually a great deal of experience in some things that a lot of people can probably relate to. And well, this is the whole purpose of the show anyway, is to take people that have had experiences and let them tell their story about how their life was, what made them change, and what has driven them to go into something that they really enjoy doing, and the dues they had to pay to get there, or the dues they're still paying as they make their life and sharing their life with others, excuse me, in a business field to be where they want to be. So today my guest is Jason Pockrandt. Did I say that correctly?
That's correct. Jason Pockrandt.
Good. And he is now a speaker and a life coach. And he's still young. I won't say his age. If he wants to tell it, he can tell it. At any rate, he was very interesting in the pre-interview, and he sold me on his personality and on his life's experiences. So, Jason, tell us about, start from, I don't know, I would prefer to start from the beginning, but wherever you want to start from to get to where you are now.
Sure, Kirk. Thanks for having me on the show. First off, I want to say thanks to that. I appreciate you taking out time and letting me be a guest and share my experience with your listeners. So,
it's my pleasure as well.
That being said, I won't take you back to what was about the beginning. Was around the time when I was 17 years old or so. At the year of 2004, I lost my father to a battle with prescription pills. And at that point, it had kind of put me on the trajectory of secluding myself, if you would, with school and using what I'd always known my whole life as a security blanket. So I started out at the junior college, and I had attended for a couple of years and picked up my basic degree in liberal arts there. And then there was a time when I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so I transferred over to Saginaw Valley. And there was a day I sat across from the counselor who looked at me and asked, "Jason, what do you want to do with your life?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a criminal investigator. I want to find out answers to all these questions, and I want to be the Barney badass, if you will, and go find out answers to everything that I thought I could come to a conclusion for, not only for myself, but for my family, because the way we had always talked about it was I was the smart one, and I was the one that made it out, so I took it upon myself to kind of figure out all the answers and get to the bottom of it. So with that, I started college at Saginaw Valley here, because I didn't want to leave home too far. I didn't want to leave my mother and my younger brother. So I stayed close, and I listened to the counselor. She printed off the program for me and told me a criminal justice degree was what I needed, so that's what I started doing. And then I had spent the next 2 years there failing to do any self-discovery, to be honest with you. That was the time where I just buckled down, and I had always thought, watching people go through things, that there were two types of college students. There were either myself, and we were the ones who got sold on the $16,000 sales pitch that if we finished college as fast as we could, we would get a job, and we'd make a bunch of money, and life would be perfect, and everything would be all right. So there was that route. Or there was the alternative where I watched everyone pick a degree and start heading in one direction and then say, "I want to be a meteorologist," and then they'd switched up, and then they were a carpenter, and then they were a vet, and all these other things. And I kept looking at them and talking to my friends. I said, "Why are you guys wasting so much time and money?" I said, "All you got to do is get done with college and get your degree. You'll get a good job. It'll be fine." Mm-hmm. So I always thought they were crazy, but it wasn't until I realized at the time, or years later, that really they were taking the smartest route they could have and self-discovering and introspecting, if you will, and figuring out what they wanted to do. So I graduated from college, fast forward a little bit there, and then I spent 6 months trying to find a job. All through college and all through my whole life, it was nothing more than minimum wage jobs. So I'd never accomplished much financially in that realm. And also leaving Saginaw Valley, I landed $19,000 in student loans from the whole deal as well, seeing how I didn't have many mentors in my life and I didn't have any father figures or any role models really around me to help guide me with that. So $20,000 in debt, a degree that I didn't want, and I was out in the real world now trying to figure out what I was going to do with myself and how I was going to take care of myself, my fiance, financially. So I landed a job 6 months out of college at a residential treatment home here in Bay City. Started putting in my time. 2 months into that, I realized how much that was completely horrible. So I decided that wasn't for me because the mindset that I had when I went into it, I wanted to make a difference and save the lives of all these kids, and I just wasn't able, unfortunately, to make the impact that I'd wanted to. So I moved to third shift, and I said, this is going to be perfect. I said, well, find a solution to all the problems. I said, put me on third shift with the hope that everyone will sleep through the night because I couldn't help them the way I'd wanted to. So then immediately, though, with that, the nights just started getting longer and longer, and night after night I'd go back and do the same thing with 2 cups of coffee, a smile on my face, and just, as I mentioned, just the hope that, everyone would sleep through the night and I'd keep them safe, and that, everyone would be all right. But
yeah, you ended up moaning and droning through the whole night.
There were some stories I could tell you about the coworker and I felt like one of the things is I felt like a caged animal for a year or for months that I was doing it there, because all we had was a long hallway with these rooms and then one small little a room for us to sit in on these couches and watch TV and just go back and forth with each other. My friend of mine, he hated it just as much as I did. He wanted to be a state trooper, so we're both 2 peas in a pod sitting there trying to figure out what we're going to do with our lives. And so as I sat there, though, I started reading these books because I was always smart and I was always had a strong interest in personal development and personal growth. And there was these nights where I was reading these books, and I remember one night when John looked at me and we got into a kind of a heated debate about something, and he said, "Jason, you read enough of those self-help books yet? You going to do anything about it?" And I remember I looked him in the eye and I said, one day I will, John." And so I had finished a few books, and I'd stumbled across Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University and a book called 48 Days to the Work You Love by Dan Miller, who was a big career coach in Tennessee, and then also a book called Quitter by John Acuff. And so I'll spare you all the details on that, but essentially those 3 books literally transformed my life, because after sitting at work and realizing things weren't going to get any better, I had stumbled across the concept of a life coach with Dan Miller in his book, and then I'd read the quote by, I believe it was Zig Ziglar, or possibly Jim Rohn, and it was the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results.
Yeah, that's a quote from Einstein.
Einstein,
yeah.
Yes. Pretty sure it's requoted by a few other people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it just hit me, and it just hit me one night where I thought about that, and I said, what am I doing with my life? I was working 11 to 7. I was sleeping 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. I'd have dinner, I'd talk to my wife, and I'd go back to work. And that was it. And it was 5 nights a week, 8 hours a night, 5 nights a week for 52 weeks a year.
Before you go on, let me ask you a question. I have some other ones I want to ask, but right now, just on what you just got through saying. 5 days a week, doing the same thing day in, day out. Now, some people actually find security in that. So tell me, why didn't you find security in just the fact that I've got money coming in, and it's the same old stuff, it's nothing challenging, so I've got an income, and I got a wife, and I got a life. Why wasn't that satisfactory for you?
Well, at the time, it just to me, the biggest struggle was the fact that the money was the only thing I had. So as I mentioned, I graduated with $19,000 in debt, and my wife had some other college debt and some credit cards that we had racked up. And so we had about $25,000 in debt, and I'd put my loans in deferment. And so to me at the time, it was kind of that sense of security, seeing how it was the most money that I'd ever made. It was the most I'd ever made. Mm-hmm. I think I was getting $12. I got $12.48 an hour. And I know all my coworkers that didn't have a bachelor's degree only earned about $1 less than me, which included my middle-aged coworker that slept throughout the night alongside me as I stayed there week after week, even though I reported that. But no. So for me, I thought I was at the peak, and it was decent money. It was the most I made, and I had some security, which is I think what kept me going for the first 6 months, maybe 6 or 9 months. Because every 3 months I'd stop and say, "Hey, I can make it till 6 months, and we'll save up some money. I'll save up." And we were saving a little bit, and but I wasn't paying off any of the debt, and so yeah, there was some sense of security there. But after a while, just everything else just kind of took over and trumped that value.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, what was what was it that took you from, okay, I got security, to I've had enough of this, I need to move on? What was that?
Well, I'd actually found, once I first started looking into the financial peace stuff, there was a Saturday night when I finally got to the point of deciding that I didn't want to stay in debt anymore, and that once my wife and I got engaged in January. So I started to have thoughts about the fact that if we were going to get married and we were going to come together and become one as a couple, that we should have put our finances together, and I got tired of living like roommates. Mm-hmm. So after we got engaged, I made the decision to put us through Financial Peace University, which is what kept me at the job for another, the next year after that, because then we started paying off our debt like crazy, and so I kept it for that while. But if you would, the turning point for me was after going through Financial Peace and then teaching that class and then going through a grief share class to deal with the loss of my father. Mm-hmm. I just kind of got into a point one night where I just couldn't take it. Like, I just absolutely hit rock bottom, and it had been a year, and then it had been a year and a half, or it had been 6 months, and then I said, I'll make it till 9 months. That's it. If 9 months, and if it's not any worse, I'll get out. And then I said, but I got to stay for a year to get experience on paper, on my resume, for my next job. So I made it a year, and then eventually it was just that following June. So it was, from June of 11 until June of 12. And then it finally was the end of that year came, and I had hit rock bottom, and by the grace of God, we just couldn't keep enough kids in the program, actually. And my boss came to me and had mentioned that he needed to lay off a couple of people and asked me if I was interested in taking a layoff at the time. So
kind of jumped up and down and went, yeah.
Yep. I gave him, I gave him the brow and said, well, let me think about it. I'm not quite sure. But after applying for a couple jobs to work my way upward and get into a better position, and that didn't pan out for me. So he kind of came and said, well, I know you don't really want to be here. So so it all just kind of worked out for me to give me my launching pad. But
oh, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny because sometimes people can actually see you're not really happy here, are you? May not even say it to you, but they can sense it and just go, But, a job, as I used to learn this, was job is an acronym for just above broke.
Right.
Or just
That's
over
where I
broke.
stayed.
Yeah. Just over broke. But, yeah, I kind of addressed this in one of my blogs not too long ago, just about talking about working for somebody else, or other people have actually written about working for somebody else, which is self-imposed slavery. You're actually working for somebody else, so you're saying, I will work for you for this value, okay? for this amount of money per hour or this amount of salary per week or whatever the case may be. And you really can't be happy with your own life. Actually, there are some people actually like that, and they consider that to be security. And so I was asking about security before. So, taking a look at that from that point of view, we find ourselves unhappy with something, but we allowed this to happen to ourselves. We're going to take a quick break here, so stay with us. My guest today is Jason Pockrandt, and he is a speaker and life coach, and we'll continue with our interview with him just after the break, so stay tuned.
Are you ready to put an end to thinking about how you wish it were and take action? Take this step to find out more by going to coachingbyria.com, and you can receive your free consultation session with Coach Ria. Coach Ria is a certified professional life coach with a passion to help make the difference in the world.
Hi, and welcome back. Today my guest, as we said before the break, is Jason Pockrandt. He is a speaker and a life coach. Still a very young guy, but we're talking about his dues that he has paid to get where he is and where he wants to be. Before we took our break, we were talking about the dues that he's been paying, and I just want to ask Jason, you're talking about you're in a job that was basically dead end. You hated it. Do you consider that to be something that you could say you were paying your dues to learn something for your future and how you can relate it to other people as you grow your own business now? How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. For me, the biggest thing about taking the job and the message, or excuse me, the lesson rather, that I didn't learn at the time that I'm now able to take into any other part-time job or any work that I do is, for me, it was mostly the mindset. I mean, I couldn't for the life of me, no matter what, be able to change my mindset and choose my perspective in any way when I was at that job. No matter how hard I tried, I could never get myself to be able to see it for what it was, for the fact that I was able to pay off the debt, the fact that I was making more money than I ever had, or the fact that I had security and then I had a job. You know, the whole time all I had was I just sat back and listened to everyone else tell me that, tell me those things, that you have a job and in this economy you should be grateful and you should be happy and it doesn't matter that it's horrible and you don't have time to see your wife or your friends or your family or anybody, just stay here because you're making money. Mm-hmm. And so, but the lesson I learned from it, that I took from it today now is, as I'd mentioned, would be the perspective, the ability to choose my perspective and see that it was what it was, and it was just a job, and to this day it was just a stepping stone, and it was one of the best and biggest stepping stones in my life, because had I never gotten the degree that I didn't want, I never would have gotten that job to discover that that wasn't the area or the avenue that I wanted to be able to serve and help people in. Because I just wasn't, to be honest with you, I'm not a confrontational person at all. And so to put me into that type of environment with my mindset of helping everyone and changing the world, I really appreciated now the fact that and that experience led me to be able to say, hey, this whole realm of criminal justice or social work isn't what I want to do. So it kind of put me on the trajectory of figuring out how I could serve people in the same capacity, but in a different avenue, which I never really considered. So,
yeah, finding your own avenue, finding your own way to do something, not living up to someone else's expectations and going, well, yeah, that's what they say I should do, so I should do it. You can take a look at it, but you still have to make... This is something I tell people all the time. It's just that in the end result, you are the one who has to make the decision about what you're going to do with your life, whether you decide to follow somebody else's suggestion or follow your own vision or dream, it is still your decision. So if you're going to make a decision, why not choose your own soul's desire? That's something I just tell with people. However, let's go back to what you're talking about, paying your dues. You paid your dues with doing a dead-end job. Basically, that's the way we call it anyway, a dead-end job, a job
Sure.
that you just kind of like, oh, God, I have to go there again today? You know,
Right.
as you're saying, I don't get to see my wife, I don't get to see my family, my friends, whatever. It's just you're working to survive. And that's basically it. You're not working to live. Or as I used to tell an old boss of mine many, many, many years ago when he kept trying to get me to work overtime, and I was on salary, so I didn't get overtime pay, and I said, look, I live to work, I work to live. I don't live to work. So, you know.
I love that.
Yes, I don't maybe have a great life by your standards, but I work to live. That's it. So anyway, why don't you continue on? Tell us a little bit more about your paying the dues, things that you've learned along the way.
Well,
I know you're young, so maybe.
well, I'll take you here in this direction for just a moment here. Part of the one of the biggest lessons that I learned in regards to paying my dues, if you would, is the idea of once you're able to create a vision for yourself and you start to believe in who you are and what you're capable of doing, then I've come to learn that the power of letting go of the past is one of the most powerful things that we can ever do. Because I paid my dues for the 5 years. It was the 5 years of college, and then the year and a half of work after that, and for me, it was about a total of almost 8 years before I even accepted the fact that I lost my dad. So when we talk about paying our dues, you know, we can do it by taking jobs we don't want, and then we can also pay our dues by spending 8 years of our life before we even care enough or have the understanding or even peel back that first layer to have someone come into our life and say, hey, stop for just a moment and think about what you're capable of. Because I paid my dues for, as I said, for about 17 or 18 jobs in my history of from sales to food to insurance to everything. And I just couldn't figure out what it was. And it was always, I'd take a job, I'd work a year, I wouldn't like it, and I'd leave. And I'd take a job, I'd work a year, I didn't like it, and I'd leave. And I recall the longest job that I ever held actually was for 2 years, and that was making minimum wage. But I worked at a daycare, and I worked with a bunch of just wonderful, slightly older than me women, and we had a good time, and I got to help change lives and watch kids grow. And talking to my coach, there was the conversation we had one day where he says, Jason, listening to you talk about that is the last time that you remember what it felt like to just be Jason. Mm-hmm. And for me, that kind of hit me hard because I spent 8 years not even realizing the pain and the agony that I was putting myself through. I just thought, yeah, like you had mentioned, Kirk, it's just paying your dues. It's just, this job to get to the next job, to get to the next job. And it was never the idea of, fighting for ourselves and working toward creating the things that we most desire. So,
yeah, and if you're not happy in your life, it's going to show in everything else that you're living. It's going to show up in your marriage. It's going to show up in the things that you're doing at work. It's going to show up in your friends. That's the point I'm just kind of bringing out here, is just that if you're not happy with what you're doing, it's going to show up in every other aspect of your life, and you may not even realize it.
You're right. I didn't realize the point, how deep I had gotten. I was pretty much almost depressed without admitting it myself. Mm-hmm. But but I could start to see it because my mom and my fiance and my friends and my family, they all start to tell me, they're like, something's wrong with you, Jason. You're just not happy. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm fine. Just got to go to work. Just going to work, or got to go to sleep. I got to get ready. I got to do the thing. But yeah, even just recently, my mom's actually watched a couple of videos of me on the internet and heard me speak, and she actually sent me an email and said, "Wow, Jason, she said, you've really changed. I think I finally get it now. I see you differently." She's like, "I think I know you now. Not that I didn't know you before, but now I know what you're doing."
Yeah, she knows your heart. That's the biggest thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You were mentioning a book, 48 Days to the Job You Love.
Yes, 48 Days to the Work You Love by Dan Miller. Yep.
Work. Okay, sorry, I'll change that. But anyway, tell us what you learned from that.
Well, the interesting thing about that, it was a great read, and it was supposed to be, it's intended to be read as one day at a time. So it's supposed to be a 48-day process, and you actually work through it, and you start to discover your talents, your talents, your passions, your gifts, and your abilities, and then you went through this process of, you're supposed to go through the process of essentially finding and targeting companies that you would be a good fit with based off of your personality, and then going about your entire work search opposite of the traditional route, and essentially finding companies and targeting them and introducing yourself with an introduction letter, and then a cover letter, then a resume, and then a phone call, and then essentially claiming what you want and asking for the interview and saying, "Hey, I'd be a great fit for you." And but the thing I learned was, as being the creative that I am, I didn't have the patience to actually read it one day at a time. So as I'm at work and I'm reading through the thing and I'm scouring over all the stuff, and I got about 14 or 15 days in, I think, before I read ahead and finished it. But it was in that book was when I first discovered the concept of a life coach, because Dan Miller and down in Tennessee is one of the pretty popular, fairly popular career coaches, and he introduced the concept to me, and I remember reading it one night, and I said, "I have no idea what it really means, but it's what I want to be." You had that, and that sounds corny or cliche, but
no, well, it's not to me anyway. Go ahead.
But I thought about it, and then I just kept reading all these books, and I read these books. So you don't know what you want to do with your life, and everywhere I went, I just kept circling back to this concept. I was like, "Well, life coach, I can do that. Like I can help people change their lives, because I had a conversation with my father-in-law one time too, and I'll never forget this. I was telling him again about a couple things my friends were working on. I said, "Oh, so-and-so is, working on this, and I'm going to help him take it to the next level." And he says, why don't you find something for yourself and go do it?" And I said, "That's what I do. I help other people get their things off the ground. Like I help other people become successful." Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of an interesting concept now, or idea now, when I look back on it, that I stumbled my way into doing just that, if you will, as a coach. But
yeah, exactly. And I'm listening to you say this, and I'm thinking about, sports coaches. I just did an interview with a woman who is not too much older than you, who lives down in Florida. And the two things that turned her on in life, or that does turn her on in life, is dance and education.
Awesome. So
she became a dancer, and if you know anything about dance, your expectancy or work expectancy is just like anything in a sports team. The older you get, the less your body wants to cooperate with what the younger ideas are going on in the world. So at some point early in your life, you're just going to have to retire from being that professional athlete or this professional dancer. And so what do you do from there? She's now teaching it, but she always was teaching it in that respect. And she also, because she's even like you, who loves to read and loves to experience, loves to live life, and wants to incorporate all these expressions that she has for living life into something that she can share with others. So you're doing the same thing. It's just would be called life coach, is just another way of saying education.
Right.
How do you help somebody to help themselves, which is what education is all about. have to think about this one quote, but I think it was Einstein no, it was Mark Twain. I never let schooling interrupt my education. Something like that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've read that one. I remember making a note of that, too. So
yeah.
That's nice.
So, because schooling tends to be, especially these days, something that people want to learn to do it this way. In other words, conform to what I'm telling you, and everything will be all right. Well, as long as you're conforming, you're never being yourself. You never find that happiness. So, continue on with your thought, because we have to take another break here fairly soon.
Remember where we were?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's take the break now.
Absolutely.
And we'll be right back. So be with us, folks. We'll return with Jason Pockrandt, and we'll continue with our interview with him. Hold on. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Pat Kammer, author of Love's Voice Changes You, Book 1. And I now have Book 2, which is called Hello Awesome, Message from Spirit in Pat's Patters. Buy your book from Amazon.com.
Do you need a website or a webmaster for your business or hobby? A wordsmith for a research project or for a script, an article, or even a language translator? Do you need an audio or visual project created or edited? Contact K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk for all of your website, writing, and audio and visual needs. Our rates are competitive and our services are excellent. That's K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk or email us at info@kwave6productions.tk.
Hi, and welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here at K-Wave 6 Radio. Again, my guest is Jason Pockrandt from Bay City, Michigan, a speaker and a life coach. Before the break, we were talking about his experiences and what he had learned from the book 48 Days to the Work You Love, what he pulled from there, and how he, even his father-in-law was telling him, why don't you just go out there and do it for yourself? And he's just going, that's what I do. That's what makes me happy, is helping other people. So, Jason, you want to pick up from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before the break, I was reading through 48 Days to the Work You Love, and I was also working on financial peace with my wife now. We had gotten engaged in January, so we were working on paying off our debt, and that's where I started to get the ideas of doing financial coaching. I partnered up essentially the concept of the finances that I was working on for myself, my wife, with 48 Days to the Work You Love, and discovering, well, hey, if I can, hurry up and get out of school, and if I could pay off $13,000 in student loan debt, my first year out of college, or my second year rather, after putting it in deferment for a year, I can help people do that. I can help, the millennials and the kids my age figure that out. And so I started working through 48 Days You Love and figuring out the different ideas about people's personality types and the disc profile and other things. And as I said, it all connected too, because Dan Miller's best friends, and he was in a mastermind 30 years ago with Dave Ramsey, and those two together started their massive empires that they built today. And so I'm reading 48 Days of the Work You Love, and then I'm starting to read John Acuff's book, Quitter, and that one is really great. It's called Bridging the Gap. It's called Quitter, Bridging the Gap Between Your Day Job and Your Dream Job. Mm-hmm. So you throw that in the mix, and you have this young guy who's telling me all about, how he can go from working on working at all the different consulting companies and such to being a full-time writer for Dave Ramsey, and then following his dream and doing everything else. There was a night I drove down all the way to Grand Rapids. I'd worked third shift, got out that morning, and then drove all the way down to Grand Rapids with my mom to go volunteer for a Dave Ramsey event. And at that place is when I'd met John Acuff as well. And so ever since then, it was just the idea of watching all these people and seeing that it's possible. You know, I think the biggest takeaway I got from 48 Days of the Work You Love was that whole new concept and the new approach to finding work that you love, and to truly say, hey, if I want to work at Target or I want to work at Home Depot, and I love working with my hands, I love being a woodworker, I love, you know, working with people, then you target those companies, and you can go from striving for just enough to get by at a minimum wage job to go out to a company and tell them, hey, I'm a good fit for you. Are you a good fit for me? And then let's figure out how to negotiate a decent pay so I can, you know, do work that I love.
Exactly. I like the way you just put that at the end. It's just negotiate with the employer. It's just going, hey, I don't have to accept this minimum wage. I can negotiate this, because if you like me, I like you, then we should come up with something that's mutually acceptable. I did that in one job that I had. They started out paying, I think it was $24,000 a year, and I negotiated up to 28 and started there. And by the time I finished, only 2 years later, I was at $32,000 a year.
Nice job.
So, yeah, it's finding and not being ashamed to say, I am worth this. And this is what you're finding out for yourself, or you have found out for yourself. I am worth this, and I have something to give. So
Absolutely.
I have a higher value for myself, and now it's just taking it and showing other people, yeah, see, I can help you. That's what I do.
Yeah, and to be honest, even before I'd gotten to the coaching, the concepts and the process that I learned from 48 Days of the Work You Love, after I had walked away from the youth care home that I was working at, I had sat down with myself, and I was going to utilize that process to go find another job. And the first step was to make a list of 40 companies you wanted to work for. And I think I wrote down about 5 before I applied at Target. And I'd sent them the cover letter and the introduction and said, hey, I want to work here. And they had rejected me. They had rejected me for the one position that I'd applied for originally because they had just gotten filled. But the funny thing was, is they called me. They either called me or they sent me an email. I forget exactly, but I'd called them back to thank them. I think I called them back to thank them for sending me the rejection email, for letting me know. And when I was on the phone with her, she had said, yeah, we didn't have that job, but are you interested in any other leadership positions? And I was like, absolutely. And so after going from the boys' home, making the most money that I'd made, I went into Target. I talked myself into a leadership position at Target, and then again, you know, made about $3 more than I was making there as well. So then went up to another jump, making the most money that I'd ever made. And and it was just an interesting process, you know, to understand that, yeah, this is because I told myself, I said, I want to work for Target. And I went out into the world and said, that's what I'm going to do. And I did it. So,
So, you still have that job, or?
Nope. That one was, there was some things I went through. I was there for about 9 months. This was just recently. This was recently after I had gotten my first couple clients here. And so I'd worked there for a while, and then there was a situation. We were going to move to Tennessee, actually, because I had thought I had a friend down in Tennessee I'd met online, I'd connected with, and he was really good friends with Dan Miller, and he, you know, cleans his property and does some other things and helps with his events. So I was under the assumption that now I was going to be a life coach and everything was going to be fantastic. I thought, well, things just aren't working out too well here. Then the wife and I, we can just move to Tennessee. We love it down there. It's beautiful, and life will take off. So I was on track to do that, and we went down for a vacation. And while I was gone, my supervisor actually had taken it upon herself to tell all the other executives there that I was leaving. And so when I'd come back and decided that I wasn't going to Tennessee, things just got a little awkward at work, if you would.
Yeah.
So, so I decided to, step out of that box again because it was just starting to confine a little bit more for me and stuff. So,
I understand. Listen, let me ask you a question here. Let you run with this one for a little bit. Sure. I did an interview with a guy last year who, speaking of Tennessee, that's where he brought up the memory. The guy is now a professional comedian. Okay,
awesome.
He just gave up everything and just went into that. And he's also doing something else, I believe. But what he told me in his interview was, and he's encouraging people to go out, and he says, just get an education of any kind. It doesn't matter. Just get an education. He says, because where he grew up and his mother encouraged him, he says, look, she didn't encourage him to go to university or anything. He had the ability to go, but he listened to his mother who says, look, you should become a barber, you should become a truck driver, you should become this or that, because there's always a need for people that do those types of jobs. It may not be fulfilling, but you will always have security that you have the money going into that. So he did that for a while. So he went and did this work, and then he decided, this isn't what I want to do. So he's going to university, I believe, and he's also striking out on his own for comedy, and he's making success out of both. So how can you relate your experience of someone telling you just take the secure route versus go out on your own and go, I am Jason, I have value, and I can make my niche in the world doing the thing that I enjoy doing? How can you relate your life with that?
Well, one of the biggest pieces of it is I've had this similar concept come up before, and I've had the struggle of, I'm not out to tell people, avoid college and never get a degree and never never do that thing. But for me, it was, as I said, I would just encourage people to think about their mindset and to think about the perspective that they carry when they go to college. Mm-hmm. Because by all means, you can go to college and get a degree, whether it be in the trades or just another formal education, but you have to be able to never let go of your gifts. Mm-hmm. and to continue to keep searching for what it is that you are meant to do and that you most love to do while you're going to college. So by all means, there's plenty of people that, or even myself, I wasn't able to just go out into the world and hang my shingle immediately. I had taken a lot of steps and a lot of long thought out nights and conversations and prayers and discussions with my wife before I'd gotten to the point. But as I said, for me, it was mostly the perspective that I was carrying and the inability for me to choose to be happy. So for all the people out there that are able to get a job as a truck driver or a carpenter or whatever the trade may be where the demand's always high, then by all means, I would strongly encourage that they continue to do that if it pays the bills and puts food on the table, but just don't ever use that and allow that, if you will, to overpower your desire to go out and follow your dream. Mm-hmm. Because for me, it was the 18 months of, even after I'd started to figure out that I thought I could be a life coach and that I'd wanted to do it, I just sat back for too long and let the job keep me down like a brick. It just kind of crushed me because by then at that point I had absolutely zero self-confidence in myself to even imagine going out onto my own. So the secure road at the time, even though the job was horrible, seemed a lot more appealing, but in the long term, I wouldn't recommend sticking with it for much longer than I did. So,
well, let me ask you, because yes, there are people out there that everywhere in the world that find the security in doing the mundane, or some people actually. I'll give you an example. There's a guy that I knew probably 30 years ago. He was a a minister. I was just trying to put a adjective to that. Well, let's just say he had his college degree, and in other words, he wasn't just a self-taught minister. He was a degreed minister, and he decided to give that up. And what did he do? He became a cross-country truck driver.
Wow.
That's what he enjoyed doing.
Awesome.
When I was living in Arizona, just a little over 10 years ago, I was working at a company, working in the office, and I lived in suburbs of Phoenix. And there's a guy that always drove the same basic route every day. And you'd see him in bus drivers in Phoenix area, because it is desert, basically. They wear shorts to drive the bus. Okay, it's hot.
Nice.
And every time you open the door, he's a great big smile. He'd laugh with you, and it's just like, why is this guy so friendly? There's never any other bus driver I've ever met in my life that actually would just laugh and talk with you and all that kind of stuff. And we became friends because I liked talking with the guy. And come to find out, the guy had a doctorate degree, if not 2 doctorate degrees, but he got them during the Vietnam War. That was just his way to get out of the draft. It was his deferment. So he just educated himself, and he worked for the government and all that kind of stuff. The Vietnam War ended, then he quit working for the government. Then he thought, well, let me become a paramedic. So he tried that for a while, and he did that. And the end of the story basically was he became a bus driver. He says, I work the afternoon shift, so I don't get called in to do an extra shift. So I just work my one shift. I go home, and and he was single, because that's the way he wanted to be. He says, I have my animals, I have my plants, and that's what makes me happy. I got a degree, yeah, but I don't want to do that. I don't want the stress. I just like doing what I do, talking to people, enjoying life, laughing with people, and then he goes home and then he enjoys his life. So it's not going into business for yourself, as you've discussed it just a little bit ago. It's not just about the money. It's what makes me happy. So with that, we're going to take our last break. Stay with us. We'll be back with Jason Pockrandt.
Hi, this is Amy Young of JSJ Phone. We are providers of junior iPhone, iPad, iPod, also Samsung, Sony, Nokia parts and accessories at very good quality and low prices. We sell to individuals, and companies have 3 to 5 days delivery time by DHL or UPS. We do delivery in 24 hours after payment confirmed. For more information, see our website www.jsjphone.com www.jsjphone.com. Contact me, Amy Young, mailbox emy@jsjphone.com, or by phone 0086 13418696395, by Skype emy.yang2012.
Hi there, this is Chad C. Meek, writer and executive producer of the epic UFO thriller Giant Rock the Movie. Even if you haven't been abducted by E.T., you need to listen to the K-Wave 6 radio network to get the latest of the odd, the unusual, or more importantly, the fun. See you at the movies.
Hi, and welcome back. We're in our last few minutes with our interview with Jason Pockrandt, speaker and life coach. And where we left off just before the break was something about self-confidence and During the break, Jason and I were talking about something that he remembered that he wanted to share with us. And, Jason, you can go from there and tell us about what you're involved in now, and we'll continue from there. Go for it.
Awesome. Yeah, as we just over the break, I just remembered I had a meeting yesterday with a professional speaker of mine, a friend of mine that I'd met recently in my Toastmasters group, and we talked about relaunching our businesses, and he's making a recommitment to himself to take his business to the next level as a speaker and get his message out there. And he told me he went down to a friend's house to put up some signs with this young man who's running for Congress, and he had mentioned that he was out there and he went to put a sign in the front yard, and the lady looked at him and she came out and she said, Jeff died 3 weeks ago. And my friend started talking to me, and he was telling me, Jason, it was just a really enlightening day yesterday for me, talking to you first and then going out with Tom and then finding out his friend passed away. And he said, I'll tell you what, Jason, he died with his music in him, and I'm not gonna. And then talking with you a moment ago just reminded me of this quote here from Dr. Wayne Dyer. It says, don't die with your music still inside you. Listen to your intuitive inner voice and find what passion stirs your soul. Listen to that inner voice and don't get to the end of your life and say, what if my whole life has been wrong? And so thinking about that, he had called me last night. He called a few times actually to get a hold of me because he wanted to recommit to me and to himself that he's not going to die with his music in him. And he's told me that I've got quite the message myself and that him and I are going to take things to the next level and we're going to go change the world. And so that meant a lot to me actually to hear that, and then just thinking about what I'm working on today and, speaking and coaching and helping the creative entrepreneurs, take their gifts and take their music, if you will, and find the confidence to share it with the world and get out there. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I don't want to ramble on this one, so maybe if I ramble too much, Jason, maybe this will be your job for the next few seconds. There was something I used to tell people a lot when I was younger, which was by the time I'm old and can't do anything anymore, I want to be sitting back thinking about the things I had done, not thinking about the things I wish I had done this or I wish I had done that in my lifetime. And basically that's what you're talking about with don't let the music die with you. Go out and live your life. Follow your dreams.
Absolutely. And the most powerful thing we can do is just start today. So for me, as Kirk mentioned in the beginning there, being 27 years old myself, I've gone through plenty to help other people understand and discover that today's the day to start living, because the world's a playground and you've only got one round. So go big, be bold, and promise me at least that you'll never spend time looking down.
Yeah. Life is not a dress rehearsal. Go out and live it now.
Absolutely.
Anyway, tell us more about what you're doing now, how you got there, and then we'll bring the show to a close. So you got the floor. Run with it.
Well, the short of it is
not too short.
After like I said, after having a breaking point and leaving the job there, I went back to Michigan Works, and I struggled for another 3 months to try to fit in a box. And then it was the day that I had met my life coach. It completely transformed everything for me. And I stood in his office, and he made me throw my arms out wide and say, you know what? I am magnificent, and I am wonderful. And I told him I wanted to be a coach. He told me everything I was doing right now was a really great financial friend, but until I was getting paid, I wasn't a coach. And so he told me to pick my price and set my rate and go out into the world and tell him what I can do. And that's what I did. I had went out 2 weeks later, and I had claimed my first coaching client, and I'd got $395 for 3 hours of coaching with Jason for the month. So I went from $12 an hour to $133 an hour within 2 weeks.
There you go.
Which actually only took me 8 years. So if that makes sense. So it took me 8 years to go from $12 to $100 in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just beyond blessed to go out into the world and and connect with my first client, and he was a young man who was a father and a husband, and now he's a full-time artist and paint instructor, and he took his leap of faith and he reconnected to his gifts and his passions, and he's out doing it, and I'm out doing it, and that's just beautiful. So
yes, there's two things in life, in my opinion, and you can debate me on this one or just correct me, whichever. There's two things in life that are actually contagious. That is happiness and hatred. Hatred almost seems to be the way life is going these days in this world, but there's people like you that come along and say, no, you can be what you want to be, and you can do it with love.
Absolutely.
Continue with that thought, man.
Well, I like to agree with you on that, and I'd like to say there's only two motivating factors in life, and it's either fear or love. And as you said, when we come to any point in our life, every moment of every day, we get to choose. We get to choose who we are and what we do, and we get to choose our perspective and decide we're either going to go out into the world and believe that we can achieve anything we set our minds to, and we choose to believe that we have the love and the compassion for ourselves and our family and our friends and everyone else, and we go out and make something of ourselves, or we operate out of fear, which leads to operating out of hatred, and it leads to years and years of, depressed, upset husbands and fathers and mothers, and it's a mess. So we just get to choose, and that's what I'm here today to do, is to help individuals shift their thinking and start thinking deeper about themselves and what they're capable of, and then deciding to go choose to be them.
Wonderful, wonderful. So tell us about your business, the name of your business, and your website.
Okay, well, actually, the name of my business is actually Live to Give. Live to Give because I'm on the mission to pay back my parents for the 18 years of life that they gave me. And you can find me over at jasonpockrandt.com, and that's where I have all my latest episodes of The Connection Show, which is what you can find in iTunes, where I'm out interviewing creative entrepreneurs and helping, having them share their tips and insights with listeners about creativity and authenticity and a life of freedom, doing what you love.
Share with us your website again, and would you mind spelling your last name, just to make sure everybody can find you?
Absolutely. That's Jason, Jason, Pockrandt, POCKRANDT.com.
Wonderful. And just as we're closing the show today, this has just been too much fun. We're going to have Jason back again sometime in the future.
Perfect.
Yeah. And just give us a little bit more information about your services.
Right now...
By the way, are you willing to work, or do you work through Skype or webinars or anything along those lines?
Yes, I do, actually. I do. I have a few different options as a speaker and a life coach. I do one-on-one coaching. I also do group coaching that I have. I have a group coaching program online that I'm going to launch here shortly. But I do my coaching, if you're not locally, I do it through over the phone or via Skype. I have more information about that on the website if you're interested. But anybody can feel free to contact me for a connections conversation and see if I can help take you to the next place in your life. So
wonderful.
Just go ahead and contact me if you'd like, or send me an email. It's just jason@jasonpockrandt.com.
Cool. This sounds wonderful. Jason, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show today, and definitely you have an open invitation to return. You don't have to wait for me to give you an invitation or call you back. If you got something you have to say, you want to talk about, let's do it. And everybody, let me, did you want to say something there?
Oh, no, I was just going to say thanks. I was just saying thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And people, I would hope that you will contact Jason and learn a little bit more about him from his website, is jasonpockrandt.com. And the name of your business again?
Live to Give.
Live to Give. All righty. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you next time around. Be well.
Thank you for being part of our audience. For more information about K-Wave 6 Radio and the services we offer, go to www.kwave6radio.tk. Have a wonderful day.